If you've been knocking out small projects for a while now and looking to take your skills and creativity to the next level, then you've come to the right place.
I built a knife block and a bread box recently, and they both reminded me of a few different techniques that I regularly use but take for granted. I realised that they're probably really good things to talk about because they're the things that have really helped me in my woodworking journey. This is about the little touches that can elevate your builds, the things that can help spark your creativity, and the things that will just generally make your time more enjoyable in the workshop. It's not about making things difficult, complicated, or challenging. It's about improving your efficiency, having more confidence in the workshop, and just enjoying yourself. After all, aren't hobbies supposed to be fun? So I want to kick things off by talking a little bit about material selection and the way that you can elevate your builds in very subtle and cost-effective ways. For example, this batch of 3 knife blocks was built for a client on a budget. However, I still wanted to bring some level of elevation throughout the build, so I decided to incorporate some of this really rare red tingle wood. And because this stuff is so rare and valuable, I decided to only incorporate a small feature strip. That way, it still has a level of elevation and it still has some story, but it keeps costs down, and that allows me to build the pieces within my client's budget. Now, if you don't have the budget to go out and source rare or exotic hardwoods, another great way you can do that is find some reclaimed materials that have a history. Might have come from an old town hall or a church windowsill or something along the lines of that. But it's a really great way to tie in a bit of local history and add a bit of story to your builds. So choosing materials isn't about using the best materials, it's about using the best materials suitable for the project. And of course your budget. And that leads me to my next tip, contrasting timbers. I always try and use contrasting timbers to bring that level of elevation and just add a bit of aesthetics to the build. This is also a really great way to spark your creativity and get you excited in the workshop. Now, if you've never done panel glue-ups of this nature before, or you find them a little bit stressful, don't worry, I used to as well. One thing that I've done to change that was build my own panel clamps. I couldn't afford the big brands like the Rocklers, but I've discovered a way to make my own by buying them in kit form. Once you've made them, you'll have them forever. And if you're curious about how that's done, I have a video on it and I'll drop a link in the comments. You'll save yourself hundreds of dollars and loads of stress. Leveling up your woodworking game isn't about mastering really difficult techniques or making things more challenging. For me, it's about having the discipline and the patience to pay attention to the small details that are mundane and tempting to rush through. So don't cut corners and just commit to the entire process, which leads me to my next tip. Keep things simple where complexity isn't needed. Hence, this knife blocks, I'm just going to do one long open slit that can accommodate any size of knife, and this makes it versatile to anyone who chooses to buy it. This also makes them very simple for me to construct and means that I can batch build them. And batch building is a really great way to streamline your processes and cut down your hours in the workshop, meaning that you can make your pieces more affordable and accessible. And as a bonus, batch building is a really great way to perfect your techniques and focus on your skills. I think one of the most visually powerful techniques that you can incorporate into simple woodworking projects is roundovers and chamfers. It can take a very simple build and add an elegance to it. And edge profiling is certainly a rabbit hole that you can go down and have a lot of fun with. And I understand that using routers and router tables can be very daunting, and yes, they definitely command respect, but start out slow and build up your confidence. And I feel like that's a good tip when it comes to using any tool, especially power tools. They all command respect, and just be patient with your skill level. If it feels dangerous, it most likely is, so you probably shouldn't do it. Remember, there is so many different ways to achieve an outcome. Now, there is a lot of experts when it comes to woodworking, and something that I regularly remind myself of is the only critique that matters is mine. I'm the one that needs to love the piece. Or if I'm building a commission for a client, the only critique that matters then is theirs and if they love the piece. There's a lot of different schools and philosophies within the woodworking world, and a common belief is that if you use fasteners in your woodworking projects, you are not a woodworker. This also pops up with the purists that only use hand tools. My personal opinion is it doesn't matter if you use hand tools or power tools. A lot of people use CNCs and they work with wood. I think if you work with wood, you are a woodworker. In saying that, if you are one of those legends out there that only uses hand tools, then I tip my hat to you because you are a far superior woodworker than me and have a lot more patience. Commendable. And just because these knife blocks are finished doesn't mean we are. The next project is all about what to save and what to throw out. And this is something that I feel people are very extreme on either side of the scale with. You either throw out everything or you keep everything. Me, I try and hover somewhere in the middle, as difficult as that is. Just like with these whiskey barrel lids, I've done a bunch of projects for whiskey distilleries and wineries, and I always think that these whiskey barrel tops are way too good to throw out, and I stare at them all the time, and something finally sparked in me. For some reason, I saw a bread box. And what you determine to be usable will depend on you as an individual. For me, I try and go through my offcuts pile at least once a year, pull everything out and lay it out and categorize things by their size and their species. If it's been kicking around for a couple of years, go and look at it, analyze it and think, do I really need it? Space is also a huge considering factor. For me, my workshop's not huge, but it's not tiny either, and this allows me to keep a pretty good amount of offcuts, but if I'm not careful, I'll quickly fill the whole thing up. So try and be discerning and just keep the best pieces. When buying tools, I always follow a philosophy from one of my all-time heroes, Adam Savage. Always buy the best tool within your budget if it's going to be something you're using all the time. If it's an obscure tool and you're not sure how often you'll use it, buy the cheapest version of that tool and then upgrade it later if you use it a lot. And this is exactly what happened with my table saw. If you followed my journey for a while, you know that I started off with a small Makita construction saw. Then I worked my way up to a second-hand 40-year-old sliding table saw. And when I was finally comfortable with that and I'd saved up enough pennies, I went out and I spent the bucks and bought the table saw of my dreams. And this is something that I will have for a really long time. And I've had a bunch of other upgrades along the way, but the perfect workshop does not exist. There's always something bigger and better and fancier coming out every single year. My point is, just start small and work your way up. One of the biggest obstacles when using reclaimed or obscure materials is that every piece is completely different. Now, there's ways that you can use that to your advantage. For example, the remainder of these whiskey barrel lids, every piece is a different width and many of the pieces have come from different lids, so the joining system is different. So what I'm going to do is embrace that, and I'm just going to rip the rough bits off the edge and they're all going to be different widths. Now, to emphasize that rather than trying to disguise it, I'm going to go ahead and put a little chamfer on every single piece, and that will just give the piece kind of its own kind of vibe. Rather than trying to fight the imperfections, I'm going to embrace them. And another one of my heroes, Laura Kampf, always says, every defect gets respect, and I absolutely love that. Now, I'm not claiming to be the safest woodworker in the world, but we are all on a journey of learning. And the reality of it is, tools can bite. And it's not those one-off cuts that you make, it's that repetitive work. Running 20 or 30 boards through the table saw or the router table, that's when you're going to have that split-second lapse of concentration and really hurt yourself. This is something that has been really emphasized for me when I've started watching back my own workshop practices in my own footage. I've been really fortunate that I've not had any major accidents in the workshop, touch wood. But my point is, if you're going to be doing repetitive work, just stay vigilant and take plenty of breaks in between. You don't have to rush through it and get everything done. Remember, you're on your own time schedule. Now, do you remember earlier when I said there's more than one way to achieve an outcome? Well, this is one of those times. Because I put a chamfer on all these panels, I got some glue squeeze out between all the chamfers. Now it forms a perfect 90-degree angle, and rather than sanding it and risking rounding over all the edge of those chamfers, I decided to make my own tool using a little piece of dowel and one of the carbide cutters off my planer. And it was as simple as drilling a hole in the end of the dowel and just screwing the carbide cutter in place, and it worked out so well. It saved me hours of hand sanding. For someone who doesn't know a lot of joinery techniques, this one in particular has served me really well and has actually become a bit of a feature in a lot of my projects. And it's as simple as gluing all your panels up, letting the glue dry, and then marking out locations and doing through dowels, allowing the dowels to become a focal feature of the piece. And this piece is a perfect example for that, because the way these whiskey barrel lids are connected is by dowels. So when I cut this, I made dowels visible anyway. So this just added a way to incorporate that and make it look a little bit more deliberate. But aside from aesthetics, it's also a really great way to add strength to your piece. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there who love their fine joinery like dovetails and hidden mortise and tenon joins, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. My point is, find your signature style that works for you. There are so many places that you can save money and cut down costs on a project, but your hardware is not one of them. And I have found that out time and time again. In fact, I learnt that lesson again on my last build when I brought these really cheap threaded inserts to screw the bar top onto a bar that I'd made. A couple of them split and I had a really hard time. So spend the money on the quality hardware and save yourself a lot of headaches. And as this project comes to an end, I just want to wrap this video up by saying, your time in the workshop has nothing to do with the tools or materials. It's about you and your mindset as a maker in the workshop. The biggest lesson I've learned when it comes to making anything is to slow down, don't be scared of failing, and know when to walk away and take a break. There's no point being frustrated and trying to push through a project. Remember, the only time limits and schedules that are on us are the ones that we put on ourselves. So get out there, love what you do, and have fun. That's it, legends. I appreciate you watching, and I love all the support you guys continue to give me, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.